Speaker, the House is now immersed in a debate around yet another omnibus bill. The Aquaculture Legislation Amendment Bill No. 3 makes amendments to the Aquaculture Reform, Repeals and Transitional Provisions Act 2004, Fisheries Act 1996, Māori Commercial Aquaculture Claims Settlement Act 2004 and the Resource Management Act 1991. On its own, this may just seem like a technical clean-up, another piece of legislation driven by administrative purposes. As the MP for Te Taitonga, however, I want to bring two important points of distinction in speaking to this bill. The first, of course, is that it's been 6 years since the Māori Commercial Settlement Act was passed. Urgent progress must proceed to ensure iwi get the full value from the settlement. The Māori Commercial Aquaculture Claims Settlement Act 2004 provided a full and final settlement of Māori commercial aquaculture interests since 21 September 1992. I remember the advent of that legislation very clearly. It was something that iwi from Te Tauihu, or the top of the South Island for those not in the know, of course were especially interested in. The purpose of the 2004 legislation was to enable the marine farming industry to continue growing without risk of litigation relating to contemporary treaty grievances and to ensure iwi access to coastal marine space to develop their marine farming interests. The proposed legislation is arguably then a work in progress, especially in consideration of the changes aimed at simplifying the process around use space for aquaculture activities allocation. It is also the means of achieving incremental progress, taking into account the interim measure put in place to allow for the continuation of the 20% allocation mechanism for Māori interests in aquaculture. Our sources tell us that aquaculture management areas have not been at all successfully designated by regional authorities due to a lack of resourcing and planning capacity. The main problem with this is that in order for the 20% of new space allocation for Māori aquaculture activities under the Māori Commercial Aquaculture Settlements Act to be carried out, these areas need to be established. And so the purpose of this new bill is to streamline planning and consenting processes by removing the requirement for aquaculture management areas, provide stronger incentives for industry development while maintaining existing processes to ensure environmental limits are respected, enable central government to take a more active role in aquaculture planning and consenting, and honour the settlement under the Māori Commercial Aquaculture Claims Settlement Act. Now I want to speak to this last point in more detail, as this is the second point of distinction that the Māori Party brings to this debate. Because of course this legislation is not just about tidying up the statutes for the purpose of housekeeping. It has a long whakapapa with whānau hapu and iwi who seek genuine progress from their connections with their maunga, awa, moana, marae, tūpuna and atua. And I want to share a little story with you about my own whānau experience. Many years ago, the people of Waitohi were moved by the settlers, the settlement government, from Waitohi to Waikawa so that the Picton township could be built where they were living. Now at that time, Waikawa was a swamp. And my uncle Mike Reeves was born and raised in Waikawa. He's talked to me about life in the mid-1940s in Waikawa, when both sea and freshwater food was plentiful. The whānau regularly benefited from the ample supplies of lamprey eel and ordinary silver belly eel found in the swamp from the beach. This was also a breeding area for whitebait and thousands of baby flounder right across Waikawa Pa foreshore. In those times of plenty, the people enjoyed fresh flounder, scallops, cockles, pipi, and tons of herrings and mackerel. There was also a huge snapper area on the west side of the bay. In the bay itself, there was plentiful blue cod, paua and kina. The whānau went to their beach to pick mussels, kupa and other kaimoana. Now, for those of you that are listening, I'll stop right now so that I give you a chance to stop salivating. But of course, this isn't a good news story, because eventually The Waikawa Marina was dug out and land reclaimed by uplifting the seabed and filling in the beautiful swamp. In that one act of human intervention, the people were robbed of their source of natural, healthy sea and freshwater food because of the marina pollution. Their scallops have shifted out of the bay into deeper water because of pollution. The only shellfish left, kupa kupa, is way out in the bay. Fast forward to 2010, and now Port Marlborough wants to shift this shellfish from where it has been for hundreds of years by extending the marina so that more wealthy outsiders can moor their expensive toys there. And so the bill comes at a very good time for our people who are outraged at the decisions that local authorities continue to make, seemingly more focused on profits than on people, on the financial return rather than on the long-term environmental health and well-being of the people. And so I have to say that there are certainly issues within this legislation which I would seek the expert advice and knowledge of our whānau leaders like my Uncle Mike Reeves. And I'm thinking particularly about the nature of the new space allocation mechanism. The proposed reforms seem to normalise aquaculture by removing the need to create aquaculture management areas and rebranding across the board all aquaculture activities as coastal permits. There is concern that this is an interim measure with no clear indication as to what will replace it and when it will be replaced. In our opinion, this issue should be finalised first before the legislation is progressed. In fact, if we were to talk with any of our people involved in aquaculture, I would suggest that their main focus would be that the new space for aquaculture activities allocation of 20% should be increased, not removed. We all accept that the current legislation hasn't worked as it should have, as there has not been enough progress made in the allocation of new space for aquaculture activities by regional councils. The proposed reforms around the allocation of new space, although not ideal, are at least a step forward in simplifying the complex process of new space for aquaculture activities allocation. But, and this is the crucial thing, we must see ongoing and formalised consultation with iwi as a vital step in making progress. The commitment shown in regard to future consultation with iwi leaders around this issue is encouraging. The Māori Party promotes ongoing and continuing engagement with ministers and iwi leaders in the hopes of reaching a speedy resolution which can promote the development of the aquaculture industry and secure a central position in that industry for iwi. And just for the record, I want to outline some of the key understandings we have around iwi leaders operating in this and indeed in other fora with ministers. The role of the iwi leadership group is strictly focused on advising ministers on the development of options that best advance iwi interests. It is to be noted, however, that members of the iwi leadership group do not purport to speak for or represent any iwi other than their own. There is no one-size-fits-all template which provides the generic iwi answer. Accordingly, the iwi leadership group does not have a mandate to negotiate or reach agreements on behalf of any iwi. Their focus is on reporting back to iwi, both directly through Pānui and Hui as required and through regular iwi chairs forum. Finally, it should be noted that engagement between ministers and the ILG does not derogate from the treaty relationship between iwi and the Crown and is no substitute for direct engagement between the treaty partners. With all these principles in mind, I do want to acknowledge the leadership of iwi and record our respect for the views that they bring, including the views of experts from regions with interests in aquaculture as well as outside expertise where that is required. And I remember what my Uncle Mike keeps fighting for: a quality of life, a clean, pristine environment, the ability to go to the beach and pick your own food, leaving behind a legacy of beauty for our mokopuna. The Māori Party welcomes the open door approach and will support this bill at the first reading to enable the kōrero to be had.